Hello modded Minecrafters, and today in this little demo video we'll be taking a look at the Extreme Reactors mod, which is probably the most OP power generation mod available for probably mid-game. Now, a lot of people think that this is fairly complex and difficult to get into. It's actually very simple. You can see in my little hotbar at the bottom I've got a selection of items. This is basically all you really need, and there's a couple of little extra blocks on the end there, the graphite block and the diamond block, which we'll be using for some demonstration purposes. So let's pop in and have a look at how you make stuff. Now, the block that you'll be using most often is the reactor casing, and this is a relatively simple block. You need a casing core, which you make using your iron, graphite bar, gold and redstone, and each one of these you use to make 4 reactor casings, which again use iron and graphite. Now, graphite is made from smelting coal or charcoal. That's that simple. It's a straight 1-for-1. There's nothing difficult about that at all. So as I said, the 2 materials you're going to be needing most of is your iron ingots and your graphite ingots. After that, you'll need a bit of gold, bit of redstone, maybe a few other bits and pieces. But this reactor casing, as you saw, you get 4 for every casing core that you use. And that's important because we're going to be using an awful lot of these. Not only do you use it for building the case and the frame of the reactor, but you use it for building the other things that we're going to need. For example, the reactor controller uses for the power tap, which you use for getting the power out, uses for the access port, which you use for putting items in or out, again uses for, you're seeing a kind of pattern here. So the control rod, let me guess, yep, 4 as well. The last item really that you use as part of the build is the fuel rod. It doesn't use the cases, but again you can see it's iron, graphite, and this time a yellorium ingot. Yellorium ingots are just made from either mining your yellorium ore and smelting it, or sieving sand and smelting it. If you go across here, if you've got the X&ILO installed, you sieve sand, and if you're using an iron stiffened mesh or better, you get a chance of some yellorium dust. So the smallest reactor you can actually build is a 3x3x3 cube, and with most things where you're going to be using a chunk loader to keep stuff loaded, you'll be wanting to install your reactor within a single chunk. Now, you can either look to the top right of your screen at the minimap. You can see I've got the chunk boundaries displayed on those. You can remember the F3 combo key to bring that up, or again with most Minecraft mods you can just tap F9 and that will put your little vertical lines on to mark the chunk boundaries. If you tap F9 again, then you can see the blocks within each boundary, but we're just going to have this on. It makes it nice and easy. So your reactor needs a nice firm base to operate from, and that's, as I said, for the most basic, is going to be a 3x3 block of reactor casings. We need a reactor controller. We need a redstone flux tap, to get the RF out. We'll pop that on the back. And then I'm going to use 2 access ports. Technically you only need 1, but for simple automation 2 is always a good idea. So we'll pop that one on there, and we'll pop one on the other side, and this one we're going to set to output, which we do with that button there. So as you can see, it's now got the blue arrows on pointing away, and the input's got the lime green arrows pointing in. In the middle we are going to put our fuel rod, and then just top off the corners with our casing. Do the same all around. Oops. And then on top of your fuel rods you need to put a control rod, and the control rods are used to control how efficiently or how much of a maximum output the reactor is going to produce. So if we right click on that, you can see we have this little control rod insertion and some arrows, and we can just increase that 10% at a time, decrease it. So if we had it on 50%, then the reactor's only going to produce a maximum of 50% of what it's capable of. It can be important. You can use it for balancing and for controlling the efficiency, but it's really not that much of an issue because of how efficient these things actually are. So everything's built up, and as you can see, the case has actually turned into this different design. Just in case you missed it, we'll break that block. We have the basic casings, and when we put the last one in, it pops across, the controller turns red, so we know we've actually got a valid build here. So we'll come around, oops, wrong side, we'll come around to the input, and we shall pop our uranium ingots in there. There's a few I had spare. Now each fuel rod that's inside your reactor will consume or can store 4 uranium ingots, and these are converted instantly into millibuckets. That's what this is all based off of. It uses millibuckets as the consumption rate. So we've clicked on the controller, and we can see where fuel status is all full. It's not depleted. Everything's sitting there nice and good. We have a casing heat which tells you how hot the outside of it is, and as you can see, the higher the heat, on the casing raises energy output and coolant conservation. So a high outside heat, casing heat, is actually good, but you want your core heat to be relatively low. So the lower the heat in the core, the more effective it's going to be. It's actually the other way around. So we'll turn that on, and we can see that our basic 3x3x3 reactor generates around 260 RF per tick, which is equivalent to around 3 or 4 typical basic reactors, basic generators. You know, things like your coal generators, your lava generators. That's not particularly fantastic, but if we look at the amount of fuel being used, it's using 0.028 millibuckets per tick. And don't forget, every ingot that we throw in is 1,000 millibuckets. So every second we're going to be using 20 times that, so it's going to be approximately 0.6 millibuckets per second. Do the math, and it works out that every ingot lasts for just over 27.5 minutes. So yeah, it's 1 ingot a half hour. That is efficient as, well, a very efficient thing. It's crazy efficient. And you can see just this last little bit here, the energy buffer. Every reactor comes with some storage built in, and it will store 10 million RF. Now that doesn't scale with the size of your reactor currently. The mod's author apparently does have plans to implement some scaling, but that's not there yet, and let's face it, the mod itself hasn't changed much since it was first created. So we'll leave that alone, and we'll go off and we'll look at something a little bit better, because hey, 3x3x3, 264 RF a tick, that's not bad, but you know, like I said, it's 3 or 4 standard generators, which for space is not much different. So we'll just quickly wander across here. We'll find ourselves a new little chunk. Let's use this one. And we'll go up for something a little bit larger. So we'll just go up to our next size, which will be a 5x5 base. We'll stay for 3 high at the moment. So nothing particularly special. We'll just fill this in. And we'll look at some of the other things that you can do with this mod. Now I'm just going to fill in both sides here, and we'll leave that completely blank, and what we'll do is we'll stick all the inputs and outputs on this one side. Just makes life a little bit neater. So controller, casings, we'll pop a fuel rod in. Oops. Finish this off. Yes, I suck at building. Now we have a large amount of space around our reactor. So if we chuck the other fuel in that we've got here, when we turn this on now, there's virtually no cooling. Air is terrible at cooling the reactor core. So we'll turn this on, you can see the casing heat stays really low. But the core heat pretty much maxes out. It's going to race all the way up. And you can see we're generating 180 RF a tick with about the same production consumption. Now that's awful. So what we'll do instead is we shall install some passive cooling to this, and we will use some graphite blocks, because each graphite block is 9 ingots of graphite, which is 9 items of coal. It's effectively just a reskinned coal block. So we'll stick that in. We now have a bit of cooling around there. You'll notice that I only did the sides that were actually touching the core itself, and that's simply because diagonal it does nothing. It affects nothing. So we have a bit of cooling whacked in there. Let's turn it on, and we'll see that we race up. We've gone past the 260 that we were using. We've gone up to just under 300, so we've gained around 10% increase on the standard 3x3x3. Again, that's still fairly low, but we had these corner blocks which had nothing in them, so we are going to instead stick some more fuel rods in. There we go, and the controllers on top, and now we have a much improved reactor. It's not quite 5 times as powerful, but as you can see, we're racing on up, and we are actually, it's more than 5 times as powerful, because we were on what, 300. We're now on 1.7k, just under, which is actually completely insane, you know. And the fuel usage, as you can see, it's gone up from 0.03 to 0.04, and that means that instead of using 1 ingot every 27.5 minutes, just over, we're now going to be using 1 ingot every 20 minutes, which it's what can you say? It's less, but you're generating just under 1.7 thousand RF per tick, and you're using 1 yellorium ingot every 20 minutes. And all you need to get a yellorium ingot is some sand and a sieve and a little bit of luck. And you can easily automate the generation of the yellorium with the power from this and have stacks of it left over. So again, if you're playing modded, one thing that you'll also generally find is that you have lots of diamonds left over, unless that's just me. I've been playing a bit of Sky Factory, and I have so many diamonds I don't know what to do with the stuff apart from maybe build a base out of it, but that's going to look tacky as fuck. So we'll swap the graphite bars over to some diamond blocks, and we'll jump back down and turn this back on. So now it was 1.66, 1.67. We've gone up to 1.8 thousand RF per tick, and the fuel usage has barely changed. Now what you're generating will go down as the fuel is converted from yellorium into cyanite. But because we've got the 2 ports on this side, every time it creates 1,000 millibuckets of cyanite, the cyanite ingot's going to get dumped into here, and another yellorium ingot's going to be chucked in. And that's it basically for this mod. As you can see, you can get huge amounts of power out of a very small amount of space, and really all you're going to be using is coal and iron. So have fun with that, and we'll catch you in the next video.